Welcome to the September 25th, 2024 meeting of the Urban Design Commission. My name is Sarah Miller and I am the Vice Chair of the Commission. When called on, applicants and speakers will come to the front podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Please do not approach the podium until that has been vacated by previous speakers. Please speak into the microphone and identify yourself and provide your address for the record when you begin speaking. Address your comments, questions, and testimony to the Commission. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. It is unnecessary to repeat testimony previously given by others. Citizens may address the Commission on agenda items by responding to Chair's call for speakers during discussion on each item and signing the speaker's log at the podium. All comments must be relevant to the item. The Chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and/or remove that person from the council chambers if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior. Please see the agenda for more information about these requirements. If you parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary or the Arts District parking garage immediately south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket for you. The agenda and documents are located at okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then select the Urban Design Commission meeting, then click on an agenda item, and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Please see the agenda for additional information regarding meeting procedures and the review process. Keith, will you please call the roll?
Miller.
Present.
Appeton. Present. Howell. Present. Reneko.
Here.
Dixon Oso.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Our first item is an approval of minutes from July.
I'll put forward a motion to approve if there are no other comments.
I'd like to second that motion. Nathan's already seconded. Yeah.
Okay, that passed. Minutes have been approved. We have no withdrawn cases, we have one continuance request.
We're going to take that one up where it is on the agenda.
Okay. We have one item on the consent docket. Do we have any comments on that one?
Does anybody want to pull that for discussion? If not, then the motion would be to approve the consent docket.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent docket.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
That one is passed. Consent docket has been approved. We have a few items for individual consideration. The first item is for Scenic River, SRCA 24-00016 at 735 Southeast 15th Street.
Good afternoon, Laura Griggs, Planning Department. It was a pleasure meeting all of you. You're going to start seeing me more now that you all hear the cases from River. You found at your place a request to continue this item that I just received because they're looking at expanding the site and relocating this building that they wanted to build. And so they didn't indicate if they wanted 1 month or 2 month continuance.
Definitely a month.
Okay, so we could continue it to your October meeting. That's the request staff has.
Any discussion? Get a motion to approve continuance on this item.
I'll put forward this motion.
And for some reason, the motion's not showing up out here, so it hasn't switched over to the, thank you. So it's a 4 to,
Okay, the motion
4 to
to
0.
approve
So it
continuance
was-
has passed.
okay, I'll change that. Thank you. I will see you next month.
Thanks. Okay, our next item is UDCA 2400024 at 908 North Chartel Avenue.
Yes, this item was continued to this meeting from the July 24th meeting. You may recall it's a proposal for 2 single-family detached residences on the lot that fronts on Chartel and abuts the alley in the middle of the block between Northwest 8th Street and Northwest 9th Street. And much of the discussion at the meeting in July was with respect to a guideline that is in Cottage that requires you to take access for your garages from the alley if you have access to an alley. The applicant took the direction that the commission gave them at the July meeting and tried to do what they could do to see what they could revise the plan to address that requirement. And they have submitted a revised project design that does have a garage access, or excuse me, an alley access loaded garage on the north unit that is fronting on the alley. And then the second unit, the southerly unit, is taking its access with a driveway from Chartel Avenue, North Chartel. Before are that the driveway that was on Chartel in the previous project is not 70 feet long. It is only the 20 feet lot for that southerly unit, and it aligns with the road. Mess up the up and down with ADA access issues and all kinds of things like that. And it also provides units for some planter areas with landscaping. Additionally, they've also brought forth an idea of providing some privacy fencing along the north, east, and south property line, with a little bit of fencing also between the 2 units. With these changes, we find it to be consistent with the applicable regulations and guidelines of the DTD1 district for Cottage, and we have recommended approval of the project, and we're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. We did receive this morning a letter from a resident in the Cottage district area who has recommending that or requesting that the commission deny on the basis that the southerly unit is taking access from Chartel. And they're here to present their concerns with you. You've got a letter on your dais in front of you from that applicant, and you'll be able to talk to them about what their concerns are after this.
Do we have any questions from the board to staff? Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak?
And I'll just note the applicant is present as well, so I don't know if they had anything they wanted to say first, or just wait and see if there are questions that come from the discussion with the public. Okay.
Go ahead, you can.
Go first, sorry.
Good afternoon, Commission. We appreciate the opportunity to present our concerns to you. I am Bill Bleakley. I reside at 607 Northwest 7th Street. I'm on the Board of Directors of the Sosa Neighborhood Association. Our Board of Directors has voted to oppose the application, and I am here to present our case. I apologize for our lateness of documents. By the time we get notice from staff on these actions, there's only a few working days in which to hold a board meeting, make a decision, and get a response in, but we will try to do better next time around. I've provided you, we think this application needs to be considered in context. While staff says that it's consistent with the regulation, we feel that your function as the Urban Design Center is to go beyond the regulations and look at your responsibilities under your bylaws and rules. It directs that the guidelines be applied in a manner that promotes the development and redevelopment of the urban design areas in a manner that provides for coordinated action and treatment for the areas included in the Urban Design Overlay District, that it serves to establish a nucleus for the stability of residential and business uses in the area, and thirdly, promote area identity and city recognition of special features and problems of the Urban Design Overlay District. We've provided a map of the area of concern, which includes the Cottage District boundaries, the SOSA boundaries, identifies what's residential, what's commercial, or what are public facilities. You will notice that the area north of 8th Street and east of Chartel is all owned, developed, or occupied by St. Anthony Hospital, with the exception of the 8th Street Church, which is a joint project between the First Church of the Nazarene and St. Anthony Hospital, and two homes that exist on the Chartel corners of that half block that St. Anthony owns. St. Anthony Hospital is in a stage of great growth, adding additional clinics, having increased demands for parking, and is reaching its fulfillment as what the community came together and asked them to do, and that was to become a dynamic and viable hospital in the inner city. The Sosa Neighborhood Association has been collaborating with St. Anthony's on addressing the interaction of the residential aspects of the Cottage District with the expansion needs of St. Anthony Hospital. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The challenge we've got primarily is one of safety. If you're familiar with this area, the streets of Chartel, Dewey, and Walker are major streets going north and south. Now, east of Chartel, even the numbered streets are larger than usual to handle additional traffic. But when the land between Classen Boulevard and Chartel was platted, it was platted totally residential with much more narrow streets and an intent to have residential development there. Our concerns with this project is the access to Chartel Avenue. You're probably familiar that Chartel has been developed into having two-lane traffic, bike lanes on each side and sidewalks on each side. The development that is proposed has very limited line-of-sight access to Chartel for the garage that is backing out into Chartel. If you're familiar with the site distance triangle, that is something that is required of the city to not have obstructions of buildings on street corners or where driveways are exited. That arc is from the property line and well, it's from the property line. It's a 25-foot radius for streets, and it's a 20-foot radius for driveways. That's even more imperative in this application because a person, particularly if they have a large SUV or pickup, is going to be backing onto that sidewalk and that bike lane with very limited, if possibly no visibility as they enter either end, the sidewalk and the bike lane. Traffic on Chartel is pretty speedy. It is enhanced now by the development, as you can see on the drawing, the hatch mark area that once was residential area is now going to be a half-block parking lot that the neurology clinic is putting in and will be partially serving St. Anthony Hospital. One of the exits for that parking lot exits onto the alley right across from the alley where this project is proposed to be built. There's going to be increased traffic in that area caused by that development. In addition, St. Anthony Hospital on the half block right north of the church and extending west is going to build a new clinic and a parking garage. So traffic in this whole area is going to be accentuated by these developments. We suggest that you need to take in consideration what historically has happened with this half lot. Back in decade or so ago, the person who bought it from the longtime resident got a lot split and left the Spanish-style house virtually standing on its own and the half lot 50 by 70 to the north of it. Since then, that lot has always been used for parking for that house. I won't go into the long story of how this all evolved, but the housing in the Cottage District is mandated to have alley parking, no driveways on the front. Where we get into exceptions is when people do lot splits on the end lot and then claim they have no access to the alley because of the lot splits. In a perfect planning world, these two lots would be part of the St. Anthony development for that whole area that is in white with the elongated area through it. However, when developers are permitted to come in and divide up these properties into multiple divisions to maximize profits, their demand for cost for those properties exceeds what St. Anthony as a nonprofit entity can probably legally be willing to pay. So they have a catch-22 on that whole half block is best suited for development by St. Anthony, and they cannot approach it because of the asking price of the properties here. There was an application in 2017 mentioned in your staff report. That applicant wanted to put 3 units on this 50 by 70 foot lot. They were denied that at the UDC hearing. And one of the big issues was here you've got this 3-story house with these huge windows looking right down into what's left of the house's back porch and rear windows with little, if any, privacy left for the house to the south. That application was denied by the UDC. The applicant appealed it to the Board of Appeals on the basis, or Board of Adjustments on the basis that, as staff says here, it's consistent with the regulations. We were going to appeal it to district court, but unfortunately our representation did not find the timely notice of appeal, and we lost our right to appeal. But the same situation applies here that did then. It's not just whether this project is consistent with the regulations, it's whether it meets all of the demands for consideration put upon the commission by its rules and regulations. It needs to look at the isolation of these residential properties, the ultimate expansion of St. Anthony's as shown on the map, and the interaction with the neighborhood association. Considering all those concerns, we respectfully ask that you deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? The applicant like to step up?
Hello, Fallon Brooks Magnus, representing the applicant, 733 Northwest 22nd. So we worked pretty closely with Michael to alleviate all of the concerns that were laid out in the last meeting. Unfortunately, there's a couple of things at play when it comes to costs. We have to put in a water line extension that costs a lot of money. So 2 units makes the most sense economically. Without 2 units, we can't do the water line. We can't build either unit without water. So we need 2 units to offset the cost. That's part of it. Access to the site is complicated, and I know that the previous application had 2 units that came out onto Chartel, and that's what we had previously put in our application. And at the request of Michael, we reworked the lots to provide access from the alley for at least 1 unit. It's impossible to do it for 2 in any kind of way that comes out with, a usable, nice-looking unit that faces the street. And so the concern here with trying to get, all the parking off of the alley is that it really limits our footprints and orientation. So we end up with 2 units that face Chartel, which looks a lot nicer, and one of them accesses from the alley. So I am happy to answer any questions or concerns or anything, so.
Do we have any questions from the board to the applicant?
I do have a question.
Yes. There is, it faces the alley.
The alley.
So if, I don't know if you have my plan set here, but you can see in the render that there's one faces the street and one faces the alley.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
So the Spanish style home is currently still there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so there's a garage on that same side of Chartel, right, for that home? Okay,
It's directly adjacent to where our garage will be as well.
okay.
They'll just be a few feet apart.
That was my question.
So wait, there is already a garage with the existing house on the street?
Yes, and it can be seen if, I don't know if you see what's on the screen here, but in the bottom right, there's
Got it.
a garage and it butts right up to, it's actually behind where our retaining wall is. There it is, little 1 car.
I do have a question for staff. In the Sosa Cottage District, is there any restriction on the density?
No, there's no minimum lot size and there's no maximum density.
So I'm a developer myself, and I'm a big believer in urban density development. And I think the developer taking the risk on putting a larger property here with not very much parking, and that's the economic risk that you're taking on. And it's bring 2 unit on this 50 by 70 lot. It's impressive what you've done here. And this is downtown Oakland City. I think the design and the corner, not exactly a corner, but you have an alley and you're utilizing the alley. I think that's, I applaud the effort there. So I don't really have an issue with this.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Do we have any further discussion from the board? Are we ready to make a motion?
I'll comment before I can maybe make a motion after this, but I don't personally have an issue with this either. The density now is, I feel like, is essential to downtown. When it comes to, I mean, one thing is like traffic congestion of this. I don't see concerns with residential property. I actually would see St. Anthony's be a much bigger threat with traffic. I think consistency-wise, if there's a garage on the street right next to this, it kind of makes, it's not that it makes sense, it's that that's the vernacular of the area and it's already kind of fitting. To say it has to fit, it doesn't have to. One would be better in anyone's world to have a huge lot in this neighborhood. We just know that it's the most expensive neighborhood in the city. So I think, I don't have an issue with the business plan of it either. I think people would like this. And I think that people already do, and this is, it's kind of what the neighborhood looks like. Everyone has their own preference and objections to design, but I don't think that's our duty on this because there's nothing gleaming. So consistency-wise with the development patterns of the area and kind of the look as well, I don't have any issues. So I'd be willing to make a motion if no one else has an objection or any comment. So I make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would like to second.
Okay, that motion has passed. At this time, I will pass it over to our chair.
All right. So the next item on this is item C, UDCA-240036, 1732 Northwest 16th. Do we have any comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is part 2 of a project that is located on the south side of Northwest 16th Street in the Plaza District. A lot of the work at the rear of the property, which is basically consists of some new fence construction and the addition of some dry storage and cold storage units and a trash enclosure, has been approved in part 1 administratively by staff. This item before you today is part 2, and it includes 3 items, which is the first being installation of a bond brick screen at the north elevation, which blocks out 2 windows. I got to get out of here, sorry. So you can see some of the work's already been started. Replacement of that front door that you see on the right, and that it'd be attached to the facade of the building, and it would make a solid wall on the side of the front door that you see here on the right photograph. The other items include 2 wall signs that would be attached to the north elevation and the inclusion or installation of a aluminum awning on this frontage. As I was sitting here preparing for the meeting, I realized that our focus in our recommendation for denial is really on item 6, and we don't have any opposition to be honest with you, we don't have any opposition to the signs or the awning. So when I get to the end of the report, I'll give you your options are. Anyway, there are guidelines in the Urban Design Overlay District that speak to the issue of pedestrian comfort, safety, and interest. And we have always that you should have visibility both from outside the building to the activity on the inside, and also eyes on the street from the inside of the building to the outside. It creates a sense of the fact that you know, security issues, that, you know, you're not out there alone. There are people inside the building that might be able to assist you. Issue and comfort. I mean, it's easy, much nicer to be walking along a street where you have storefront windows next to you as opposed to a solid factors, which we used in our recommendation and denial on that aspect of the project. That's item 6 of the items 6, 7, and 8. We remain concerned about not only the presence of these proposed walls on either side of these windows and covering them up, we're also concerned about the departure that it represents from the pattern of storefront window development along Northwest 16th. And you can see in the photographs, both on the north side of Northwest 16th and along, that there is a established pattern along Plaza or along Northwest 16th Street where you have open storefront windows facing the street and the streetscape where the pedestrians are walking. And as you all know, if you've ever been to Plaza on a busy Saturday afternoon, there's a lot of people walking up and down the street, and that goes into the evenings too. So we were concerned about breaking the pattern of having these open storefront windows by this proposal to have a solid block wall on both sides of the windows on either side of the front door here. Third aspect of the proposal that we're concerned with is the color of the brick. Most of the buildings along Northwest 16th you'll see in these photographs have either been painted for one reason or another. Whether they got approval for that or not, I can't speak to. But this building happens to be one that hasn't been painted, and you'll see the color of the brick is your traditional maroon style color brick. And what the applicant has proposed, there's I think a photograph in the packet for you to look at. The brick they've proposed to use is more of a salmon color, which is a few shades lighter than what you see on the building there now. So we were also concerned about that aspect of the project. So in summary, we do recommend the denial of item 6 on this particular agenda item. However, if the commission doesn't have any concerns, they could potentially recommend approval of items 7 and 8 as part of your motion. And that completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
I'll just call out one other thing to note when we're talking about this building. It is one building with a continuous uniform window pattern from the subject property through the property to the right, which is Roxy's. So you're covering up and kind of disrupting the established window pattern, not just generally throughout the district, but specifically at this property where it's uniform across the facade of the building. That just popped into my head while you were talking, so just one more thought.
I have a few questions, but I think for the applicant, is the applicant, can we? I have questions, but it's for the applicant.
The
so,
applicant's
yeah.
here. Yeah.
My turn. My name's Rob Elliott with Elliott Architects, 900 Northwest 6th Street, Oklahoma City. Just to make sure, everybody's been to the plaza? Familiar with the area? The plaza districts, I apologize for those who really know this very well. The Plaza District Association mission statement works to maintain the Plaza District as a vibrant and diverse place where arts, local business, and community thrive. Our client, Takara Mona, it's a mouthful for me, they propose to open a Japanese-style, not high-end, but not street food restaurant at this location. It used to be the old Okanor. A number of the items that were required for UDC approval, as Michael said, had been approved administratively, and he has no objection to the ones that remain, the canopy and the signage. The one that remains disputed, I think, is the brick screen wall. I don't know, does the commission have the complete packet of the screen wall? So the screen wall that is proposed to be built is a stacked offset bond pattern that, as you see in your packet, is meant to, it's not a flat surface. It's protruding bricks and cavities that create a screen, if you will, but it's not a flat wall. And in terms of some of the criteria in the guidelines, it would be interesting. It's not is it artistic? Well, some people may think so, but it is not just a flat screen wall. Along those lines, recognizing that things change over the years, as many as you recognize in the district. I mean, this project alone, I think, by staff report, has had over 8 or 9 different design changes over the years at this one local address. The way the brick screen wall is to be applied, there would actually be a solid substrate over the windows next to the new door, which is a glass door. So the next tenant, perhaps in the future, could easily, the windows would not be removed. They would remain and be covered. They would be covered on the outside. They wouldn't be covered on the inside per se. But it's not a permanent fix, if you will. It could be envisioned as a temporary fix if somebody else wanted to come back at some time and open the windows. There's a number of items that we could talk to if you would prefer to know our response to a lot of the items. Just to make sure that for the municipal councilor, I need to make sure this is correct. In the handout, you refer to case item 1F, is that really to be 1E?
No, the agenda has it as
I may not
item
understand the
6,
format.
but it's really in the report, it's 1F.
1F, okay, so that refers, doesn't necessarily to refer to these review items here as listed as A, B, C, D, E, F through K. It doesn't refer to those items. It's not really referring to these items here.
Oh. Yeah, it's returning to this.
Okay, but that,
Oh, I'm
it should
sorry.
be 1E.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Talking about the main building instead of the commercial waste collection. So, and I thought that was really your intention. But in terms of just going through the main building items there's a number of those items that we comply with. And I think that staff would be in agreement with that, other than some items specifically related to the brick. The color of the brick, I think is accurate. I think we agree that it would be a salmon color. I've never heard of a whole lot of dispute of color in the district, the Plaza District. This would be different. There's a lot of the existing brick that we are maintaining. Just something that popped into my head too. The awnings over Roxy cover a lot of the brick. with a different color. We maintain all the brick above the awning line and are just really, it's a matter of opinion, a small amount, a large amount, but we're proposing to cover the 2 sidelight windows by the old door. We're putting in a new glass door. We would also maintain the largest window on the northwest corner of the facility. And hopefully ask you to recognize that there's a difference between a restaurant and assembly use and a business for sale, retail sale, like a mercantile use. Mercantile depends a lot on activity, street activity, contact in and out. Most of the windows, I will say most of the windows in the district are covered with something anyway, whether it's a display of goods for sale or signs or announcements, or many of the businesses there, such as the Improv, when they have an activity, they have to close the windows. They have activities day and night. They don't need that, want that, desire that activity for the street to be seen. So it's our one last point in terms of our space is an assembly space, a restaurant. People are going there. It's a destination spot, really. People aren't just going to drop in. So they don't need that same connectivity, vitality that a mercantile business would. Are there any questions?
I have a couple of questions. Can you hear me? No? Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Very well.
I have 2 questions. One is, how do these interface with those little brick plant holder things that are right outside of this? Is there room to walk between, how much does that shorten that
Yes, these would
space?
stick out about 8 inches from the wall.
8 inches?
Mhm.
And
So,
then my,
and the plan is for all those outside improvements to stay.
okay.
The railings.
And then my second question is, why, these have lights, little slits in it, correct? Am I looking at this design correctly, where there actually is a space between each brick?
Yes, ma'am?
So why cover the windows up completely from a design perspective?
That's to anchor the brickwork itself. So you remember how we build a house and they have the little anchors there to hold those? We're doing the same to make sure the bricks stay in place.
Is there any way to do it so that light still can go through those 2 windows? Or is that just,
We could certainly try and conceive a way to do that.
I think this design looks interesting, and I honestly own the building next to it, and but I'm curious about why to get rid of those windows, because if there were a way to do that, that would be interesting to me. That's all I have to
We
say.
could sure try.
Just a thought,
Yeah.
something.
I think this is, because I am wondering, so the windows are behind this brick, and there's holes in this brick pattern, and you should still see light from the inside or outside come through the bricks lightly, or is that like spandrel or like?
They're covering those windows, that's what
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
saying.
I
I'm
think-
thinking
Putting
cover the
the
windows,
sheathing on
but do
over the window
decoration.
so that we could attach the brick to the sheathing.
I think
They're covering the windows on the inside and the outside.
Okay. Well, this is you probably don't know this, but do you know how many square feet of window that each of those is or total?
I'd be guessing, but it'd be a pretty close guess. I would say that the windows on each side of the door are 3 feet wide,
3 by
5 feet
7.
tall, 6 feet tall,
Yeah.
6 feet tall, because the transom is about 9 feet. And the larger window that stays is probably 5 feet wide and the same height.
Yeah.
So how wide is your glass door, and how tall?
36 inches wide.
By probably 7 foot.
And yes,
So if I was looking at this ratio-wise, you're technically covering 2 windows up to add 1 window the same size, in theory. Because the glass door, the door before was just a solid wood door.
yes.
This is so there's still light coming through. So that's percentage-wise, you're maybe looking at half the windows are lost versus 2 full windows.
Yeah, I looked
And-
at that way. That's a good comparison.
And I'm very curious, and I'd prefer or recommend that it would be great to have the light filtering through the brick. I feel like that would be cool. Just a thought, and we can maybe discuss more. Another question, the lighting of this too, you kind of have the look on the rendering that there's light filtering down this brick. Will you have it that way, or are there going to be lights out there, like basically?
I see. In this rendering?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, there will be lights in the canopy.
Okay, so it kind of will have this, you'll have the shadows and stuff of the brickwork at nighttime. Okay. I think that's all questions and thoughts aloud I had right now.
I have a question. On the rendering you just held up, I noticed at the very top, it doesn't look like, we're not painting any brick here, right? Some of those
No.
original, okay.
Goof on the rendering. They don't show the limestone the way it is. But everything above is to stay like it's shown in the elevation.
How does this, those two affect the original facade of the building? Would they be easily taken down with no?
The new brick?
Yes, the new brick
Sure.
on the wall. So
Sure.
the original
If we
facade
were
is
to-
not,
Yes, ma'am. If we were to do the same to this window right here,
Yeah.
there'd be a big, I'll say sheet of plywood covering it, and then the brick applied to that.
just
So
inset.
then you could just basically remove that panel and go back to the same window. And I say it easily, but it would, conceptually, that's the way it would work.
How integral is this facade to the brand of the restaurant? My question was going to be, what is this?
Right.
And then how important is that to the brand? Sometimes it's important to sell a brand.
The
to have that
design,
look.
the design comes from the owner group. It's not something that was done locally. And I'm not sure that I have asked the question of them in the right way to fully understand if there's a Japanese intention in the design. Is that like saying, I don't know?
It's okay. When you go to the Plaza District, you expect to see something cool, right? But it is also a representation of a place and time that people are going to imbibe. And so I'm sort of torn between the two.
I think that unfair comparison, but it'll be a total difference of the interior from what, if you had been to Oak-and-Or, it's completely different. It's very refined and interesting.
Does the interior need, it seems like, is dark, is it going to be a dark inside kind of?
It's going to be, well, you remember Oak-and-Or.
Yeah.
It was not light in there.
Correct.
It is on the darker side, not as dark as is it Junior's? And it's not dark cave-like, but a lot of the finishes are contrasting. All of you won't see any of the brickwork inside, although it still is there. It's all been covered up, and they're more refined finishes. There's 3 parts. There's a bar, a Japanese bar, a sushi bar, and then a grill. It's all open to the interior seating, besides a rear kitchen. But that doesn't really have anything to do with the color of the brick.
Amy, you may be more familiar with the individual buildings in the Plaza District, but it's also in the report that this is one of the few that still exists that's original brick that has not been painted. And I'm concerned about the precedent it sets that we are manipulating some of those original architectural designs, but I don't know how many of those can still exist in the Plaza District.
I'm not exactly sure how many exist. I mean, I'm old school, so I'm remembering this building 23 years ago.
Wasn't it covered in cedar then?
Yeah, it had some totally different, we took everything, they took everything off and did it this way and restored it. So it had all kind of boards and things. I mean, and I'm guilty, I've painted all kinds of brick in the Plaza District, brought all kinds of murals over there, painted all kinds of things. I think it's fun and interesting. I love this design. To me, it's very interesting. Getting rid of the windows, I do not like. But I mean, I put a giant rainbow on a building next door, so I don't know. That's.
So I think Plaza District, north side of Plaza District is actually in the Gatewood National Register District. South side of Plaza District is Classen 10 Pin, which was previously identified as eligible, a National Register eligible district. I think this is one of the most intact buildings. It was covered up with a cladding for many years, but that was removed and it restored back to this appearance. So as I noted before, it's concerning to staff to chop up one facade. You know, this building continuing all the way across to Roxy's. I'm talking about my screen and I'm not sharing my screen. Let me show. You know, the whole building is one uniform architectural design. So it's concerning to staff to start kind of chopping that up into pieces. But we do have other buildings of different architectural styles and architectural characters and time periods that are pretty well intact throughout the district, whether it's a more mid-century kind of look, whether it's, you know, the gas stations that we still have with their awnings that have been converted to other uses. So I think in contrast to an area like Cottage District that we just talked about, where the remaining historic properties are kind of few and far between and getting much more heavily interspersed with really diverse kind of modern design. This is a district that pulls a lot of its identity from the architectural character that's established in that area as this kind of neighborhood commercial node. So, you know, I appreciate that the windows will remain in place and are not being permanently removed or damaged, but I do think that the original character of this building that was previously restored is something that's worth retaining and incorporating into new development of the property.
So as I hear all this, there's, in my mind, some sort of hybrid. There's a rhythm that's created by the glass that if you could allow the brick to allow light through those sections, maybe that rhythm that's already created would still be in place. Where you don't have that rhythm, you could have your sheathing just like you currently have it. But it does break up the rhythm. And I think it'd be interesting if some of that light that could go through this brick mesh matched the rhythm of the windows that was already there.
Like thinner this way?
Just basically you let light where the window would have been. Yeah. And so when you drive by, you have the rhythm of the glass, and then you see the light peeking through those areas. So I don't want to
Instead of ceiling to floor, right?
Well,
Or
again, I would just replicate the light going through the brick would only happen where you previously had glass in order to just maintain that rhythm.
Oh, within the pattern of that.
Could that be a different detail where the windows are open from the inside so that glass is actually passing from the inside to the outside?
At least in my mind, and again, I don't want to play architect, but in my mind, just that transparency would still, you'd have to squint, but it would meet the spirit of what Michael read earlier. Mm-hmm. And it would help preserve that rhythm that you have in those buildings right there.
That was going to be my question to you. Are there alternative designs? What would be your alternative design? Are there alternatives to this, and what would they be?
I'm not prepared with an alternate right now, but I understanding part of the in your conversation is it would be the same without the sheathing behind it. So that there would be light
where there's currently glass,
Yes.
I would have no sheathing, and you would be able to look through the brick beyond the glass inside the restaurant and vice
Understand,
versa.
yeah.
Where you currently have brick, you could have sheathing. That wouldn't be, that big of a deal. But as you drive by at night, for example,
Yeah.
you would have the rhythm of the light peeking through where there is glass, and then it'd be a real, it's this veil over
Right, right.
the glass pieces that would remain.
I can see how that would be possible by putting a frame around the brick. And it's just where the windows are. In other words, framing the brick and having that frame being part of holding that brick together and then being able to place in the opening. I can see how that could work.
I don't know how you keep the bricks from being pulled out. I guess mortar, but
Glue.
yeah,
Yeah.
duct tape.
So yeah, we could certainly explore that.
I'll make a comment. I actually like it. I think it's kind of cool. I think if someone were to take it over after this, if it, for some reason, if it failed, I think the first thing they would do is probably remove it. So I don't think it would probably ruin the integrity of the area. I think it's a temporary thing that fits this it looks exactly like when I read that name and the Japanese style, like this kind of just looks like that. One other thing is, if you could remove one of those bays and just have one brick exposed bay, you could then have another window and then still have some brickwork where it's less windows and then still let light infiltrate it too. So then you kind of meet that balance. I'm only saying, I don't know how everyone else will feel on the board, but that I'm getting a vibe that this could be a coin toss if you put it up to a vote. So, but that would be one way to maybe to meet it.
One thing I would ask our group would be that maybe that this center panel, if that panel were removed, but they kept because I think one thing in their thinking is that their point of sale, their sales station is going to be there in the corner. And so that may be a little more security, so you can't look in and see the people doing business at this left-hand corner, but they may be more open to doing something, omitting or doing something different on that center section.
My button is not cooperating. I'm hearing a lot of kind of different directions and comments. It sounds like we might need a continuance, and staff works a little more with the applicant to see how they can incorporate some of these ideas, work with their property owner on what they would be willing to think through. I don't know that we're at a point where this is an approved with conditions today.
My concern's that the comments have been so scattered that if I was in his shoes, I'd be perplexed as to what to do next. So,
Is it possible for us to somehow say that our main idea is that you take the sheeting off the windows and still do the same design there so we can see that? Or are we somebody wanting more than that to happen?
I think letting the light come through the brick where the windows would have been and considering removing one of the bays of the sheathing to allow two of the storefront windows to remain. To me, both of those are possible considerations for the applicant to study and to discuss with the tenant, the property owner. That's kind of what I heard from the group.
What about, we haven't addressed, no one has mentioned the color of the brick. Is that not a concern at all? Because we don't see the variation on the rendering. It looks like the same color on the rendering.
I think it's an interesting addition, and I think because this is not a permanent situation at all, to me, none of this bothers me because this is so just like, take it off at any time. That's how I feel about it. To me, it's almost just like an artistic design.
I think the color helps to differentiate it from it looks less like a window has just been bricked in because we don't want that window anymore and more like an intentional design choice.
I agree. I was just going to comment, I think if it was a matter of we're replacing some of the bricks in there or patchworking, then it would be an issue of the color. But I think with it being a solid piece and addition that can be easily taken off, I don't think the color is as much of an issue.
If somebody put in hideous whatever on the inside piece of the glass, would we have any say? Because that's kind of how I'm seeing this, is that you could potentially put something on the interior. It could be, I don't know, whatever. So to
Right.
me, it feels like it's a veil, whether the veil's on the inside or the outside, you've got a veil. And that's where even if you had a funky shade, you'd still get some light peeking through, and that's why I'm thinking there's a rhythm there that I like. I probably would prefer to not mess with the design except to allow the light where it's currently coming out of. I'm not saying I would vote against it, but I don't know that I would eliminate one of the panels. I like the way this looks. I really do. And I think if anything, the light peeking through would add more interest to it. It would highlight the fact that
Agreed.
you've got some real nice texture there.
I agree.
Kind of with what you just said, if that's the case, do we have an motion for an approval with conditions, or to deny this? I think those would be the three options, or a continuance would be the fourth, but
I don't know that we have enough, there's a lot of interpretation that would fall onto the staff, the way that we've all talked about it. I think we need something that we can comment on.
Let me suggest a motion that says that the design is approved as long as the light comes through the brick. The light, there's no blocking the existing light to get into the windows. No sheathing behind the brick. I think I understand your intention, is that the brick is okay as long as it doesn't
I'm great with that, but
close the windows.
whatever we need to do.
I personally think that's kind of too broad of an approval, because because of the different discussions that we've had, we can say approval with that exception, and they go forward with not quite what we envisioned. I personally would feel more comfortable with the continuance with a plan brought back to us with a vision, a rendering that we can agree on.
How subjective is saying that they need to allow light to shine through and take the sheathing down? I feel like that's pretty cut and dry with approval with conditions would provide that. I mean, I don't necessarily know if it'd be left up to interpretation. Allow light shine through. Maybe percentage of light, maybe that's the interpretation, right? Maybe they could do something like that. I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
So why don't we get a continuance? It's just a month.
I need to take something back to my owner so that they can plan an opening.
I'm sorry, could you
I need
repeat?
to take either, something close to a yes or no so that they can plan on how to open. Because the continuance would be till next month.
Can we not approve it with the conditions that they do what it is we actually all agree on?
I have no objections with the sheathing being left off and letting light through. So if we want to put that up to a vote, we can just all vote and see where that goes.
I'm comfortable if we have specifics, like no sheathing at all on the windows, or not just half. Or we don't leave it open to where they can say, oh, well, we left half of it open.
So what I heard is the elimination of all sheathing. So there'd be no sheathing. Is that correct? So,
I got a question. If, say, they go with this and there's a steel frame on the inside of this brick that basically the ties weld to or something, would they have to go in for an admin approval likely for that to get that approved for how it's being done? Because that's in addition to the exterior, and it could be seen in theory. But technically, that still would protect us as a board, protect the decision, right?
So I think, we don't typically get too into the weeds on how something is constructed beyond the exterior appearance. I think you could include in the condition that, any attachment to the structure should not damage or remove any existing fabric, that they're not going to take brick out, they're not going to take windows out, drill big holes into the masonry, however you all want to specify that. And then that would just be part of our review of whatever is submitted to staff.
so I don't have a pen, but that's a lengthy motion, so if I could.
I do want to point out one discrepancy in the plans that should probably be picked up in your motion. If you look at sheet A4 in your package, there is a, I guess you call it a photo sim of what the project would look like after installation in the upper right-hand corner of that sheet. And you'll notice that below the window that is being kept, there is no bond brick screen. However, if you turn over to page A3, you can see in the middle elevation, which is the north elevation new, that they are showing that bond brick screen below that right-hand window. So that needs to be reconciled at some point.
I think that's a really good point, Michael, because I would say my comment is relevant to the rendering rather than, I think if you did that base, it'd be a little bit squirrely. That's just opinion there. So I don't know if that's a deal breaker or not, but.
No, I think that will not happen. That the brick screen will not be put under the large window.
Okay.
By the way, I think he's writing up his motion.
Yes, I'm
Just
not.
if anyone's,
And my grocery list all at the same time. I'd like to put forward a motion to approve on the condition that the existing building facade be preserved and no sheathing be installed behind the new brick, allowing light to pass through. There will also be no brick below the right large window. No new brick.
I have a question on that. Okay. The original plan was to cover up the windows from the inside.
No.
No?
Outside.
What?
It's on the outside.
Right. But I thought it was discussed they were putting the sheathing on the outside and then also covering the windows on the inside of the building.
I see. Okay.
Correct? So with this, are we asking that they no longer cover the windows on the inside of the building? Then how would the light get through?
Okay, okay, I'm going to modify my motion. It's a good point. I'm going to modify my motion to approve contingent on the preservation of the existing facade and no sheathing installed behind the new brick or the existing windows, allowing light to pass through the brick facade. There will also be no new brick below the right large bay window.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. This is passed.
Are we done?
Yep, it's passed. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I will move. I know I'll keep going forward. Under other business, we have a SPUD -1622 at 2416 Northwest 24th Street. This one will come up for, we're going to discuss this as well, correct?
Yes, you
Okay.
are being asked to make a recommendation on this item to the Planning Commission. So Michael will give you an overview of what they're requesting, but this is just to modify their zoning, and they will come back to you all in the future with an application for a certificate of approval for construction.
That's not right.
You can see it down here, Michael.
That's what I've been doing. I'm there.
So Keith, for some reason,
I'm gonna look at that one and see if it got mixed up.
no, for some reason, what's under the SPUD is
Gosh darn it.
my mural case from Exchange. He's got it. Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll let him drive.
Okay.
I have it pulled up in PrimeGov if you want me to just share my screen. There we go.
Okay, this item is a recommendation for the commission to make a recommendation on the proposed SPUD designation for the site at the southeast corner of Northwestern Avenue and Northwest 24th Street, which is addressed at 2416 Northwestern Avenue. As we've explained in the staff report, the zoning in this area is NC Neighborhood Conservation, and it's tract 4F. There are also tracks 4A through 4G. So it's quite a patchwork of very detailed level of zoning that goes on in this area between Northwestern and North Walker, above Northwest 23rd all the way up to Northwest 30th, actually. And that does also includes Paseo. However, in this patchwork, this particular site is designated as zoning for NC Tract 4F. As I explained in the staff report, when you look in the code for that, it gives you a base zoning of R2 for this site. And when you look at the zoning for R2, it gives you the land uses that are allowed and the setbacks that are permitted and so on and so forth. And this gentleman, the applicant, wishes to put a restaurant on this site, and obviously R2 zoning doesn't allow a restaurant. It does, however, allow him the setbacks that he was desired to have. There is a second part of the NC Tract 4F zoning that allows you to develop this site in conjunction or consistent with the regulations for NC Tract 4G, which is basically a lot of the properties at front on Northwest 23rd Street. And by going to that set of regulations, he gets the use he wants, but not the setbacks. And because of this conflicts and the dichotomy between the two sets of zoning, it's really complicated, and we worked with the applicant, determined the only way through this was to do a SPUD. So what you see before you is a recommendation. Actually, there's a master design statement that's attached to your staff report. and it lists out how he proposes to develop the site and what uses he wants to place on the site. And there's also a conceptual site plan required, which is in there. And essentially, the real important parts of that master design statement are that when he does come to develop the property, he will also come back to this commission with a certificate of approval application to do the actual building, just like the couple applications that came before you at this meeting. And that, to us as staff, is the most important factor. We've reviewed the master design statement for the standards that he set forth for the building height, building size, setbacks, so on and so forth. And we're comfortable with the uses he's proposed, and therefore staff is recommending that the commission provide a recommendation of approval of this SPUD to the Planning Commission. That completes our presentation for you this afternoon, and we're prepared to respond to any questions that the commission may have.
Is an important development to connect the blighted area between the Asian district and Uptown. So I'm very glad that this is happening.
I think I'm a bit interested in the context. When I think of Western, I know that we have a church there in that area. We have Dove, or no, is Dove still there? No, Dove is not. There was a school there. My question was, is the entrance going to face Western or the interior street in the neighborhood? I understand the connectivity, but I do not. Are we going to set a precedent for development on Western with this particular restaurant? Because I don't remember if there is one that faces Western inside this neighborhood. There are restaurants inside the neighborhood, obviously. So I'm just thinking about context, really.
So we have not necessarily restaurants, but commercial. Well, there is, so just across the street is a restaurant that faces Western on the west side of the street, or at least as recently as.
Do you mind sharing?
Yeah,
Is there a way
share
that
my
we
screen.
can see?
Yeah. So this is across the street to the west at the corner of 23rd and Classen. So that's kind of a collection of businesses, kind of a strip center, parking in the middle, different businesses located within that. This is the subject property. There's O'Reilly's to the south, across the street. There's a gas station, and then catty corner, just off to the side, is the Gold Dome, which once upon a time had a restaurant in it. And then you go north, and there's some businesses to the west. There's the church and neighborhood and cemetery to the north on the east side of the street, and then it gets more residential as you go further north. So the tracts 4A through 4G that Michael referenced in the NC Neighborhood Conservation District are intended to allow for commercial development to extend from 23rd all the way through the block to 24th. That if you had a property that fronted on 23rd and 24th, you could develop commercially by right on that property. Because he doesn't extend all the way to 23rd Street, he can't check all those boxes and get that zoning. And then, as Michael touched on, he still wouldn't have had the setbacks that he needed to do what he wanted to do. That NC Neighborhood Conservation District is older and clearly was trying to do some things that are a little bit different from what we would maybe want to be trying to do in this area now. But I think staff felt like kind of neighborhood scale restaurant in this location adjacent to 23rd was not an inappropriate use for this location. And I don't think there's anything in their documents that specify which side of the street they would be required to front on. I think right now they're envisioning an entrance on 24th Street, but that's not something that we would typically
It's kind of
codify
actually,
in
the
a-
entrance is kind of at the northwest corner of the building, so it kind of addresses both.
Yeah.
I agree with Nathan's point, though. Anything that adds a little bit of life to this area, because this is a weird little strip that could really use a boost.
Do we have the applicant or any representative that wants to speak on this?
I'm sorry?
Is it the applicant or any
Yeah.
representative want to speak on
The
this?
applicant's here.
If you want to.
Yeah, I think, let me get my name and all that good stuff, if you don't know me, Tyler. Daniel Douthit, Rolox Studio, 1141 West Sheridan, on behalf of Milieu LLC. My clients bought this lot. There was a really crummy restaurant on there, and they bulldozed it. It's sitting there for years. So we started doing the research to build another restaurant here, and we found out there is a 75-foot setback off the center line of Western. And then because there's a residential zone to the next side, there's a 15-foot setback off of it, which leaves us like negative 12-foot a lot to build on. So unless there's a black hole in there somewhere, we got to rezone. That's the short story. We are going to put the restaurant on the corner of Western and 24th, 10-foot setback. Some of that so we can just get it up a little bit higher with a sidewalk. The site's flat, and we're doing stucco right now, so we don't want quite as much splashback on it. That's pretty much it. Do you have any other questions?
Not currently.
So it looks like there is opportunity to continue this level of development along Western, right? This won't be an outlier. The shopping center across the street, I am familiar with. I used to get my nails done there. And so I did not know that there was an entrance on the back of it facing Western. I thought all of them were looking to the west. So you just showed that there is one that does front on Western, one of the suites. But there is development opportunity to extend, I guess, have other commercial sites along that corridor, right, near and around this particular development, because I noticed there are businesses that are north on Western, but they're in homes, right? And so you still have that, a little bit of a modulation with design, but they still look like homes. So when I say context, sort of, that's what I mean. If it's just standing on its own, that's one thing, but there are opportunities to develop and continue that development. To your point, Nathan, to revitalize and connect the two corridors, I completely agree. I just didn't want it to seem like we threw something into a neighborhood and then that's it, because you have the cemetery next, and then everything else sort of looks like homes, businesses and homes. So.
Any other questions, comments, motions? All the above.
I'll put forward a motion to recommend approval of the application to the Planning Commission for a request to rezone from NC Tract 4F Neighborhood Conservation District to Simplified Planned Unit Development, SPUD 1662.
Okay, we have a second. Looks like it's passed.
Thank you. See you in a couple months.
All right. We have, on communications, we have administration approval report. It looks like we have quite a few items. FYI, I don't know if we discussed this before, but we've merged and our length has grown on this. So there's 25 items. If there's any comments, things we need to pull, any questions, otherwise, I think we just move forward from there, right?
Correct. You don't need to take any
Right.
action on the administrative approvals report, and staff is happy anytime to answer questions you may have about items that have been administratively approved.
Cool, okay. Comments from planning staff?
As you said, you all are officially consolidated. Here now taking urban design, scenic river, and stockyards cases. Until you hear otherwise, please keep us on your schedule. Please keep responding to those quorum calls and coming to the meetings. We do continue to work with the mayor's office on appointments for both of our kind of reconfigured design review commissions. So contact me, contact the mayor's office if you have questions about that. But otherwise, we will see you next time.
Awesome.
What is the map of the scenic river?
It goes basically from First Americans Museum all the way to Meridian. Yes, it's huge.
And that's
It's-
the south side only?
Let me pull up the actual map.
It's 6 miles from one end to the other. And it goes north and south, further from the river than you would think. I'm sorry, Laura Griggs, Planning Department. And it was established in 2007. And the basis for that was some studies that were done by the Riverfront Redevelopment Authority. And so in response to that, this was created. Hadn't had a lot of development until the last few years, and it's really taking off in certain areas. So you can see it's that green crosshatched area on the bottom, from Meridian to Eastern.
And all the way down to Capitol Hill,
Right, and it-
abutting Stockyards.
And it has 6 sub-districts in it. And it also has an area where it overlaps downtown. So in that case, I have to use both sets of guidelines and regulations for development in that area. And currently, if it's in both, it will come to you. Because that's how the ordinance was worded. It went to River before.
Okay.
So you might see some of those cases too. And so you'll see the Wheeler District, you had a couple of really big ones in AA. That's from 2 new apartment buildings that they've been writing about. They're under construction, and they made some revisions to them. And so you're going to see stuff from all over town now, so.
We may be the largest landmass of a commission now, but, you know, say we'll give it 10 years, it may split up again, we'll see. So, okay.
Right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments from commission members? Next meeting date is Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. Thanks, everybody.